You ever wonder what a melee caster hybrid that shreds through endgame corruption and laughs at bosses while doing it looks like? Welcome to the Flay Mana Lich, a build that turns your mana bar into a chainsaw of destruction. This is a raw, unfiltered, and ridiculous necrotic spell carnage. With every swing, you're ripping open reality itself, summoning bolts, unleashing shards, and letting ticking bombs explode across the battlefield, all while your mana fuels the madness. This is the kind of build that melts bosses over 800 corruption, erases maps, and make your enemies regret even existing. Let's dive in. At its heart, this is a melee necrotic spell build. You're up close and personal, teleporting into the fray, and slashing with Flay to trigger an avalanche of spells. Every cut calls down chaos bolts, every strike sends marrow shards flying, and every interaction is feeding into harvest for mana sustain. And the secret sauce? You stack mana like it's your life force. Because it literally is. The bigger your mana pool, the harder your crits, the nastier your explosions, and the faster your Flay chainsaw spins. Now here's the twist. This is a low-life playstyle. With passives like Corrupted Form and Dance with Death, the build actually rewards you for living on the edge of death. The lower your life gets, the more brutal your damage becomes. It's pretty much like playing chicken with Void itself. But instead of losing, you're crashing out in massive crits and scaling multipliers. This build thrives on pure momentum. The moment you shift into Reaper form, it's like flipping the nitro switch. Your swings leech life, your crits snowball, and the battlefield starts to look more like a graveyard. You are sturdy enough to tank a storm, but slick enough to vanish through danger with Transplant, reappearing like death itself teleporting into the fray. It's melee brutality, spell slinging chaos, and Grim Reaper swagger all fused into an unstoppable rhythm. This is your main skill. Every swing and cut with Flay passively detonates a cascade of spells like Chaos Bolt and Marrow Shards, which we'll talk about in a minute. With nodes like Deadly Plot and Chaos Rip, Flay converts your mana into devastating DPS. And with Soul Reaper, Flay goes full necrotic, which will be relevant when we start looking into our gear in a few. Oh, and did I mention Flay can also be used as a movement skill? With Speedy Stride, you can instantly teleport to enemies across the battlefield to deliver quick and swift death with one swing. If you ever wanted to play Flicker Strike from Path of Exile but in Last Epoch, here you go. Now here comes our true damage dealer. These Chaos Bolts are the majority of your output, triggered automatically and passively by Flay as previously mentioned. Thanks to nodes like Exalt in Misery, Doom's Vindication, and Chains of Snow, each cast snowballs into ridiculous multipliers for your damage. And the kicker? You don't even need to put Chaos Bolts on your skill bar. It's pure automation, baby. Triggered by Flay through Marrow Knower, these Marrow Shards are your single target nukes. Now the reason why we love Marrow Shards here is that not only does it cause bleed on its own, but it hits even harder against bleeding enemies. Nodes like Deadweight make sure each shot actually hits like a truck, while Demise ensures the shots keep pumping damage into bosses long after the initial swing. It's literally the skill that makes red enemies and chunky bosses actually fear you. This is your mana engine, but also more than that. With nodes like Undead Harvest and Learn Weakness, Harvest turns into a buffing machine, multiplying your damage and keeping your blue bar topped off. Furthermore, it can also passively cast from Chaos Bolts through the Reaper of Mayhem node. Against bosses, weaving in a manual harvest cast with our weapon of choice almost feels like cheating. You're swinging your blade, you're gaining haste from Steel Youth, you're restoring mana, and you're scaling crit at the same freaking time. It most definitely is the oil that keeps the chainsaw running smooth. Welcome to your identity skill. Reaper form ain't used here just for drip, even though you totally look like a badass in this form. But beyond that, we use it because nodes like Soul Shroud and Val Shroud convert every point of intelligence you stack into armor and resistances, giving you tank layers even without thinking about it. Then Death's Door takes it further, rewarding you for living on the edge of death by ramping up your damage higher the lower your HP dips. In other words, the build literally gets stronger the scarier it looks. Death Seal is your defensive clutch, but with the interaction it has with the Spectral Wounds passive, it's also a smoothing tool for incoming damage, turning big boss hits into soft slaps you can easily shrug off. Beautiful part is, you don't even need to spec into it to reap these rewards. And then finally, Transplant is your blink, your repositioning tool, and your haste steroid. Use it to dodge, dive, or to reset your flow mid-combat. You don't need to spec into this either. Just remember it's there whenever you feel pushed into a corner. Oi oi, if you're vibing with this Flay Lich so far, do me a solid. Smash that like button so more Last Epoch players find this guide. Your support literally fuels the grind and keeps me cooking up more videos like this. Alright fellas, time to stop being so technical for a second and let's see how all the previous skills weave into one another. Always start in Reaper form. That's your foundation. Think of it as your transformation sequence in an anime. The power-up that unlocks the whole kit. Never let it drop unless something forces you to. Open each engagement with Flay. That first swing is a spark that ignites the fireworks. One cut and suddenly, chaos bolts and marrow shards are raining across the screen. With our support gear, trust me when I tell you, you don't need more than one swing to clear packs. When you're up against elites and bosses, weave in Harvest. This ensures you always topped off on mana cause boy, you're gonna need it to keep up with Flay. Drop Death Seal on cooldown for defense spikes, especially at high corruption. This is how you stay alive and brace against dangerous boss moves while everything else falls. Use Transplant aggressively. Don't think of it as a panic button. Think of it as a stylish dash. Blink through danger, reposition mid-fight, and charge forward to keep the tempo high. Guys, I'll be honest with you, this build is gear hungry. Some of the stuff on here might be hard to farm or come by. You can certainly get by with less, and for reference, this is what my starting gear was. But get this, once you piece together everything I'm about to talk about, and understand the reason behind every slot you equip, this build goes from meh to god tier. Okay, still here and want to hear more? Let's go! This unique is the linchpin of the build, and the most essential piece that unlocks the true potential of our skills. It refunds mana whenever you swing in, supercharges every harvest cast, and it scales up your chaos bolts so that every trigger feels like a miniature nuke. Best part, you can squeeze the most out of this unique with only 1 LP. So target farming in the Reign of Dragons timeline, and don't switch to this build until you have it. This dagger is deceptively good for the build because of how much crit juice it adds. In practice, a dagger like this is definitely what you want to take to scale your damage even further. However, as someone that mainly plays Merchant's Guild, not only is it a pain to target farm, but the prices on a decent roll are simply ridiculous. So feel free to choose between one or the other. For me though, the extra crit juice and the extra skill points from Trader's Tongue work just fine, so that's what I went with. Army of Skin is the secret MVP of this build. It passively generates minions whenever we hit a boss or rare with Flay, which is then sacrificed to amplify the damage of our marrow shards. Furthermore, it beefs up the damage and AoE of Flay and Harvest, while passively casting Rip Blob to top off our health. Finally, it helps us deal more damage to high health targets, while boosting attack and movement speed. Yeah, that's a lot of buffs for a single item with no downsides. Grasp of the Blood Mage provides much needed flat crit chance, while also layering defense. It synergizes with our low life playstyle by converting portions of incoming damage in a way that improves survivability against the most dangerous enemies. These rings double down on 2 critical stats, crit chance and raw mana. The crit chance keeps your Flay triggers lethal, while the mana increase scale your entire damage formula higher. Stormcarved Testament gives you a comfortable early mix of mana and resistances, but once you have a decent mana pool, swap into Shadow Words if you can afford it for the permanent haste effect that keeps you flying through echoes with non-stop speed. This is the gear evolution that turns the build from powerful into lightning fast. With this, every Flay swing gives you frenzy and flat necrotic spell damage, turning you into a blender. Remember the Flay damage conversion to necrotic I spoke of previously? This is where it comes into play. It's a perfect offensive amplifier because it converts your constant melee rhythm into a non-stop frenzy and necrotic buff. Early on, crit avoidance is the main wall for most builds as you keep getting one shot quite often. Woven Flesh solves this instantly, giving you crit mitigation while you farm. But later on, you want to swap to double Exalted Revenant Plate for endgame tankiness and extra stats to spare. This is deceptively strong. It lets incoming damage hit your mana pool before your health, and since we're stacking mana anyway, it becomes both a survival tool and a DPS scaler all in one. Only problem is it might be hard to come by, so use the Decay Skull as an alternative until you get one. Nihilis is much needed here to round up our resistances, as we don't have a lot of ways to cap resistances besides our idols. He also blesses us with extra skill points, movement speed, mana and health, so it's just too good to pass up. An alternative to this will be the Evolution's End unique, which is a common drop this season. These uniques unlock the true potential of this build. When it all comes together, getting stronger is only the start, my friend. You start feeling like the game finally caught up to the monster you've become. So how do we take this bad boy and rocket it into God-slaying territory? Let's start with offense scaling. You want flat necrotic spell damage whenever you can afford it, so that every bolt and shot hits harder than the last. And of course, mana stacking. Listen, if you're anything like me, your mana pool is sure to drain faster than you can blink. This is because Flay eats a lot of mana to cast if you're not conservative. So be sure to get as much mana on your idols as you can, on gear, and from the Warlock passive tree. Then there's Crit Chance and Crit Multi, which takes your big hits from insane to screen clearing. Intelligence stacking is raw damage and free defenses at the same time through the active and passive nodes we previously covered, so don't sleep on it. Finally, Necrotic Penetration and Shred ensure nothing can resist your onslaught. We mostly get this through our skill tree and passive tree, but having some on gear if you can manage it also helps a lot. On the defensive side, everything ties back into staying alive long enough to keep swinging. Intelligence here again converts into armor and resists, so stacking it is effortless survival. Beyond that, you want to make sure your health pool is as healthy as possible in order not to instantly drop when a boss sneezes at you, while still embracing the low life edge that powers this build. Resistance capping through idols is a huge part of the puzzle, since most of our gear is chasing mana, crit and uniques rather than heavy resistance rolls. Don't sleep on endurance either. It gives you a safety net when your health dips low, making those razor-thin moments less lethal. And of course, don't forget crit avoidance. Without it, you will crumble to random hits. Now, final note. This is a low-life leech by design and by nature, so don't freak out when your health bar looks like it's betraying you. That razor-thin line is exactly when you are at peak power, and leaning into that tension is what makes this build so satisfying to play. And that's the Flay Mana Lich, your Chainsaw of the Void. Fast, brutal, and absolutely stylish. Every echo becomes a massacre, and every boss a victim to your endless mana-fueled rampage. If you're looking for a melee caster hybrid that shreds through endgame corruption and laughs at bosses while doing it, doesn't get better than this. If this guy helped you unleash chaos, drop a like and sub and join the KamiOps crew. Also let me know in the comments how your own Flay Mana Lich is performing. And as always, stay stylish, stay untouchable, and may your crits always be juicy.